The minibus slows. The driver brakes. 11 men are on board, textile workers heading home from a late shift at the Gunmen mill. Some of them have worked that road for 20 years. They know every bend. The figure in the road is not a soldier. There are more of them in the ditch, a dozen at least. They board the bus. One man is pulled forward by the collar. They ask him his religion. He says Catholic. They tell him to get off the bus and walk. He does. He does not look back. The 11 men left on that bus, all Protestant, are marched into a field. What happened in the next 4 minutes would never be fully prosecuted. 49 years later, no one has gone to prison for it. It was a Monday. The shift had ended just after 5 in the evening at the textile mill in Gunmen, a small factory that employed Catholic and Protestant men from the surrounding townlands without much distinction. The work was the work. The pay was modest. Most of them had families within a few miles. The minibus that collected them ran a regular route south through County Armagh, dropping men at crossroads and lane ends along the way. The driver that evening was Richard Hughes. The road they travelled passed through Kingsmill, a cluster of maybe a dozen houses near the Armagh-Louth border. South Armagh in January 1976 was not a place anyone drove without thinking about it. The IRA's South Armagh Brigade had been operating in this border corridor for years, picking off British soldiers with a precision that had earned the area a nickname among the military: Bandit Country. But the men on that bus were not soldiers. They were Robert Chambers, John Bryans, Joseph Lemon, Walter Chapman, Robert Walker, Reginald Chapman, James McWhirter, Kenneth Wharton, John McConville, and Robert Freeburn. Ages ranging from 17 to 60. The road through Kingsmill was the direct route. It always had been. At approximately 5:30 in the evening, the minibus rounded a bend and the headlights found a man standing in the road. Hughes slowed. The man was waving him down. There were others visible. Hughes stopped the bus. Men came out of the darkness on both sides, masked, armed with rifles. They boarded through the front door. One of them spoke quietly, without theatre. He asked for the workers' identity documents. Then he asked who among them was Catholic. One man, a Catholic named Richard Hughes, identified himself. He stepped off. He walked. Behind him, he heard the sound of everyone else being ordered out into the field. The 10 Protestant men were walked off the road and lined up in the field. There was a low stone wall at the edge. The ground was uneven, frozen. What the gunmen had organized required numbers. Investigators would later count the spent casings. Over 100 rounds were fired. 10 men went down. The gunmen left. Richard Hughes was still walking up the road when it stopped. He turned back. He found his workmates in the field and ran to the nearest house. The call to emergency services was logged at approximately 5:45 p.m. When police and paramedics arrived, 9 of the 10 men were dead. The 10th, Alan Black, had been shot 18 times. He was breathing. The weapons used included rifles consistent with those used by the IRA's South Armagh Brigade, an AR-18, among others. The forensic evidence established that the firing was sustained, not panicked. The men were shot at close range. Some of the dead were found face down. Alan Black survived because, investigators believed, the gunman assumed he was dead after the first volley and moved on. He lay in the field for some time before anyone found him. The group that claimed responsibility called itself the South Armagh Republican Action Force. The name appeared in a statement released the following day. The statement was a lie fashioned from its own words. Those 10 men had done no dirty work for anyone. They drove to a mill, operated looms, and went home. The South Armagh Republican Action Force was not a recognized independent organization. Security analysts and later historians concluded it was a cover name used by elements of the Provisional IRA's South Armagh Brigade to claim an attack without formally implicating the organization, a distinction that fooled no serious observer at the time. The massacre had a context that the gunmen may have used to frame their reasoning, even if it cannot justify what they did. The day before Kingsmill, Loyalist gunmen had entered 2 homes in Whitecross and Bleary, also in County Armagh, and shot dead 6 Catholic men. Those killings were carried out by the Ulster Volunteer Force. Kingsmill, investigators came to believe, was a direct reprisal, the targets selected for being Protestant, not for anything they had individually done. Alan Black would spend the rest of his life telling anyone who would listen that his workmates were decent men, not combatants, not informers, men who commuted to work. The Royal Ulster Constabulary opened an investigation immediately. British Army intelligence ran parallel inquiries. In the decades that followed, the Police Service of Northern Ireland, which replaced the RUC in 2001, continued to pursue the case through its Legacy Investigation Branch. Across nearly 5 decades, no one was ever charged, tried, or convicted. The investigation produced theories, some better supported than others. 3 lines of explanation have run through the official and journalistic record since 1976. The first holds that the attack was planned and executed by the South Armagh Brigade of the Provisional IRA, using the cover name to give the organisation deniability while retaliating for the Loyalist killings the previous day. The evidence for this, the weapons used matched those in the brigade's known inventory. The operational sophistication, the controlled stop, the identity check, the selective release of the Catholic worker required the kind of organisation and local knowledge the brigade possessed, and the area was their territory. The evidence against full certainty, no member ever made a confirmed, prosecutable admission, and the cover name organisation left no paper trail. The second theory, more a variation than an alternative, names specific individuals within the brigade as organisers or participants. Journalists and investigators, including those working for the Historical Inquiries team established in 2005, gathered intelligence suggesting the names of several men involved. None of those cases reached trial. The third line of inquiry centres on what has never been recovered: the weapons. Several firearms used in the massacre have never been found or definitively matched to subsequent incidents. Their disappearance removes a chain of physical evidence that might otherwise have connected named suspects to the scene. Alan Black gave evidence to multiple inquiries over decades. He described the gunman as calm, organised. The one who spoke gave orders without raising his voice. The names on that memorial are Robert Chambers, John Bryans, Joseph Lemon, Walter Chapman, Robert Walker, Reginald Chapman, James McWhirter, Kenneth Wharton, John McConville, and Robert Freeburn. 10 men who rode a minibus home from work and never arrived. The Kingsmill massacre remains an open case with the PSNI Legacy Investigation Branch. Under the Northern Ireland Troubles, Legacy and Reconciliation Act 2023, legislation that has been fiercely contested by victims' families, responsibility for legacy investigations transferred to a new independent commission for reconciliation and information recovery. Families of the victims have argued for decades that the truth was known at least to enough living people that answers still exist. That those answers have not been delivered is not a matter of insufficient evidence. It is a matter of what evidence was acted on, and when, and by whom. Alan Black walked off that bus because a gunman told him to, and he did not look back. He has spent 50 years looking back. The minibus is still in a photograph from that night. Lights still on, engine still running, driver's door open, sitting on the verge where Hughes pulled over and never pulled away again. Thank you for watching this one. If a story like this is why you're here, hit subscribe. We open a new file every few days. Every file in the vault has a story. We'll see you at the next one.